Higher reasoning, number 1, a way to God. Theists and atheists both debate the existence and the nature of God. But both, it can be seen, are beginning from a conceptual understanding of what God is, and if God is, whether God exists. Therefore, they are at a standstill. If we wish to investigate what God is and whether God is, then let us be open to a different path. Today, we begin to set foot on that path in order to see, perhaps only partially, what all this may mean for us. Let us begin by defining God as the nature of ultimate reality. And let us, to begin with, leave it at that. Then we can ask ourselves, how is it possible to begin to find a way to God if we are open to it? I submit that the way to come to God, or what is the same thing here, ultimate reality, begins with an existential opening. By the latter, I mean something that tears me open, sundering my self-conception, to wit, what I take myself to be, as well as my world conception, namely, what I take the world to be. An existential opening is what cleaves me, calling into question my most basic understandings of self and world. Who am I? What is all this about? Why am I here? What is the nature of reality? It comes to seem as if I'm peeled back from consensus reality in the very opening moments of an existential opening. Often, sadly, the most basic kind of existential opening occurs in the face of loss. I lose someone or something I care about deeply, and in consequence, it seems as if everything I care about is shattered. Consequently, I'm now open, perhaps, not just to psychological questions, however important these might be, but here and now, I am open to existential or metaphysical questions of the kind I've been describing so far. That is to say, I begin to see that the questions I begin to ask myself are questions of me. They are questions in which I am implicated, questions in which I cannot possibly separate myself from what it is that I seek. Suppose it's the case then that you are on the verge of an existential opening, be it by way of loss or suffering, or be it by way of wonderment about things unknown. Or suppose it's the case that you yourself have already been going through the early stage of an existential opening, or perhaps it is the case that you have already been opened up for some time to seeking as a result of an existential opening that occurred some time ago. Now we can begin the inquiry into the possible existence of God. Let us begin with ourselves by asking the question, who am I? You might think that that question could be answered by appealing to your nationality, your upbringing, your belonging to certain social groups, or whatever. But soon you'll find that these answers are subject to coming and going. Perhaps you think, isn't it just contingent that I was born in the United States or in Denmark or in Canada or in Brazil? Is that really what I essentially am, to wit, a citizen of a nation state? And the answer, of course, would be no. You would begin to move through these preliminary answers and discover forthwith that they can't possibly be that which is or that which points to your essential nature. Therefore, let us begin by getting rid of empirical answers so that we can come back to the question at hand and ask again, who am I? Who, ontologically speaking, am I? Soon it becomes clear to us that there are three fundamental answers. First, I am the body. I am this body. Second, I am the doer. I am the one who undertakes actions in the world. And third, I am the mind. I am what it is that thinks and feels. Let us examine each of these proposals in turn. First of all, the proposal, I am the body. Let us ask ourselves, what is the body in our direct experience? Now, our first answer might be that the body is a particular form or shape, it is a particular age, has a particular color, has a set of organs, and so forth. But is that what the body is in our direct experience? No, that is the mind's superimposition of categories or concepts onto the so-called object we call body. If we look in the mirror and we say, I look good today, or if we say, I don't look good today, we are speaking in error. For what we are really saying is, I, comma, the mind, comma, perceive the body in a certain light. Therefore, the mind is superimposing its conceptual understanding on the body. But remember our question. Our question is, what am I? And our first proposal is, I am the body. So set aside the proposal, I am the mind, which we'll come to soon. Therefore, we can return to the question, am I the body? We can only understand this question in its fullness if we ask, in our direct experience, once again, what is the body? Soon it becomes clear to us that the body just is physical sensations. Sensations we call, using the mind, pain. Sensations we ordinarily think of using the mind as pleasure or pleasant sensations. Or there are also ones we'll call tickles, or we will call itches. There are pulses, hot feelings, hot sensations, and the like. Drop all the mental labels we give, or I just gave, to all those sensations and others, and we come to the proposal that the body in our experience is raw sensation. That is to say, pulsating, vibrating energy. Pulsating, vibrating, sensing. Let's pay attention to any such sensation. For example, the pain in the knee, or the itch behind the ear. The closer we investigate that sensation, the quicker it becomes also clear to us that the sensation arose into being, maintained itself for a time, and then passed out of being. But who was the one witnessing its coming into being, maintaining itself in being, and going out of being? Clearly, whoever or whatever we are did not perish with the perishing sensation. Therefore, in virtue of our understanding that we ourselves are not the sensation that comes and goes, it follows that we ourselves are not the body. This, as you might imagine, is already quite counterintuitive, because our presupposition in secular modernity is that when the body perishes, so too shall I perish. Now we have every reason to reconsider that understanding. In any case, it is concluded that we are not the body. I am not the body. Consider now the second proposal: I am the doer. A similar kind of reasoning applies. Take any action whatsoever. See that that action arises, maintains itself for a time, and then goes out of existence. But ask yourself, who was the one who was able to witness its coming into being, that is that of a task or an action, its perduring for a time, and its going out of being? Evidently, whoever is that one is not identical with the transient action. But now it's clear that if the action comes and goes, and if we are the one who do not in the same way come and go, then we cannot be the same thing as an action. But now ask yourself, does that not also mean that I am not the doer? Because the doer comes and goes with every action undertaken. Whereas we ourselves do not suffer the same fate as that of the doer. Hence, we are not doers. I am not the doer. And now the third proposal: I am the mind. You might think that the mind is very sophisticated in nature. But here, recall, we're paying attention only to our direct experience. You might think, therefore, that the mind is a container or a theater in which thoughts and feelings arise. But it turns out we have no direct experience or evidence of there being such a container in which thoughts arise. We say that thoughts came to mind or that thoughts passed through the mind, but that's actually inaccurate. The only experience we have is that of thinking and feeling. Therefore, we can say in all earnestness and honesty, minding is identical with thinking and feeling. Consider any thought whatsoever, then. As we observe the thought, do we not see that it comes and goes? We do. Consider any feeling such as sadness, disappointment, or frustration. If we watch it closely enough, do we not also see that that feeling comes and goes? Let us ask ourselves, who is the one contemplating the transient thought and the transient feeling? For evidently, the witness rather was there before the arising of the thought, during its career, and after the perishing of the thought. Hence, the witness cannot be identical with the thought. And the same reasoning applies to our relationship with feelings. But if the mind just is thinking and feeling, and if we are not identical with thinking or with feeling, it follows that we are not identical with the mind or minding. Hence, we are not the mind. I am not the mind. We are now, I think, in a state of genuine confusion as well as genuine, I hope, loving openness. For what has now become clear is that who we think and feel we are is not actually who we are. What we have hitherto taken ourselves to be is not actually what essentially is so. We ascend, therefore, to a higher possibility. And that possibility is, in the very least, this one, namely that it's possible that we are witnesses of thoughts, feelings, actions, and so on, that we are witnesses of mind, body, and action. But we can now ask ourselves, is the witness itself localized to the body-mind, or is the witness perhaps not localized? Just during today's meditation, let that question sink in, or let it linger on. Let it be okay that we don't know the answer to that question. We've assumed that the witness is contained, so to speak, within this temporary name and form, the one we ordinarily call Andrew. But is that actually true? Or might it be the case that the witness is not so localized within this temporary name and form? You see that we are approaching, in a stepwise, higher reasonable fashion, the possibility that there is a relationship between whoever or whatever I am and whatever is ultimately real, what in the beginning I called God. Are we now not open enough to consider deeply the possibility that there is actually some kind of relationship between me, which is precisely what I do not know now, and reality, the very fabric of being? If I am now fundamentally open to that possibility, then I'm now, just now, stepping foot on a path or a way to God. Where that road will take me, I do not know. What I'll have to divest myself of in terms of more thoughts, beliefs, and misconceptions are as of yet unclear to me. But what is clear is that this is, as it were, the beginning of a mystical or spiritual felt understanding of what fundamentally is. Hence, whereas atheists and theists have dug in their heels with a view to being right about the nature and existence of God, on the assumption that God can be understood conceptually, you and I today are in a different position. In fact, we are not taking positions. We are simply allowing ourselves to be guided at once by direct experience and by higher reasoning, with a view to discovering not just who or what we are, but also with a view to discovering what is fundamentally real.